All right, let's go ahead and call the meeting of Maury County Board of Education to order. Members, you've got a copy of the agenda for this evening. Are there any changes? Hearing none, I need a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second. Motion by Aaron, second by Conrad. All in favor? It is approved. I'm gonna ask you, would you please stand and show the
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day, God, and we thank you for letting us all be here in this room tonight. Lord, I just pray that you will give us your wisdom as we make decisions for our school system. Lord, I thank you for our administration. I thank you for our teachers. And Lord, I just pray for our students as they come in our schools every day, Lord, that we can love on them and teach them and just be a safe place for them. Lord, just go with us and be with us for the rest of this evening. In your precious name we pray.
Next item is the consent items. Here's a copy of the minutes for January 23rd. Are there any changes on those? Hearing none, the next item is the superintendent's report.
Okay, the first item we have under operational effectiveness is CTAE surplus kitchen items. There's if you read there, it's from the old home ec. We used to teach home ec at Maury County High School. It's just accumulation of blenders, mixers, various items over there. Amy has been around to all of the schools from North Murray at Murray. Bagley, Gladden, anybody that needed anything or wanted anything, talk to Amanda, come get it. And then this is what's left. There's just various and sundry items there. Most of them are, if we, at some point in the future, if the school board and decides that you want to add, culinary arts or something to the pathway at Maury County High School, none of this you couldn't use any of this anyway. It does not up to the current standard. It's more home items versus commercial grade, so it's basically of no use. So that's just a lot of miscellaneous, spoons, forks, knives, bowls, cups. I mean, that kind of stuff, and it's really de minimis items, but collectively we felt like I told Danny what we need to do after everyone, every school, if they need something, come get it. If you don't, then just collectively we'll get, whatever we can get. Just, probably somebody give us up for it. Civil Storm and whatever it was. So, is there any questions about that? All right. The next, moving on, we do have just an item there, a 5-year facility plan. Just the general overview. If you have any questions, Chris and Mike will be here on Monday to go over the plan. It's time to approve our plan. We need a resolution. They go over all the numbers and everything. They had that review today. It was all virtually instead of people coming here. But they can go through that in detail that we're required to have a facility plan to get capital outlay funding on any project. So, of course, we have Maury County High School at the top of the list. So, but that's something that is, requires, and they will go over that plan in depth with you on Monday, and there'll be a resolution that you would formally have to adopt, the 5-year facility plan. Any questions? Chris and Michael answer. They spent most of the day over there, I think, with those, folks, well, better than half of it. All right, if nothing further, we'll move on to fiscal accountability. Dr. Smith.
I feel like I was just saying that here. Yes, quickly. We'll go over real quick, the December, financial. So, first we'll talk about the SPOS. So, our January collections were up there again, nearly $816,000. If you compare that to last year, January, it was $548,000. So, once again, we've done well on our SPOS collection. If we continue at that pace, then the maximum amount will be, we'll attain the maximum amount on November 24th. So, any questions on the SPOS? Next, we'll look at the balance sheet. If you compare December of 22 to December of 21, you can see that our cash and our liabilities are very similar. We still have $2.1 million of outstanding open purchase orders. That's still 1.1 of that is still our buses. Any word on buses?
Looking at least summer, maybe late July, what they're telling us right now.
So more than likely we'll end up liquidating that PO before June 30th and then opening it up again for FY24. On the revenues on the next page, you can see that we've collected around 56% of our revenues. Property taxes, local taxes have done very well. You can see the increases of that over last year along with QBE, and state revenues are running a little bit behind what they were last year, but we're still doing well, 56% this time last year and 56% this year. On expenditures, the same is true. We're running about 50% on expenditures for this time of the year compared to 48% this time last year. So that would make sense because you've got step increases and you've got percentage increases in there, so it should be more. So the last page, you see that our revenues are exceeding our expenditures, and that's always a good sign. So we've got 3.2 more in revenues than we do expenditures at this point. That will even out as we get closer to June. June is not that far off, so that's going to even out before we get to the end of the year. So we do have a healthy fund balance right now compared to what we anticipated, but there again, we'll see how it ends here in the next few months. We should still do well for this fiscal year. Any questions on those? I know that's just a high view of that, but anybody have any questions? Seems like we just went over them, so not too long ago. Next, you'll see the investments of those property taxes, those local taxes that came in. I put those in the investment fund for December, and you can see that the interest was significantly more than it was in December of 21. Our interest on our investments was $13,000 for December compared to $238 this time last year. And lastly, just an update on ESSER. We still have a balance of around $4.4 million with a set aside for next year's expenditures, or the remaining of this year's expenditures as well. We have a balance remaining of 1.4. That's actually a little bit less
It's actually about 1.8. I recalculated and did some projections since I did this sheet, so it's around 1.8 currently. But we do have a lot to talk about when we get to budget workshop when it comes to ESSER. Okay.
Where does, SPOS money go?
It goes into the Bank of New York, and it sits in those investment accounts, and we use that to pay the principal and interest on the debt on the bond. So we don't touch it at all. All that revenue sits in investment. It doesn't come through our local money at all.
So we borrowed money and pay interest on the money we borrowed, right?
Correct.
And then the money that comes in, it goes immediately to service the debt, or it sits there. Is it gaining interest?
It is.
Is it gaining interest like the other? Okay, as much as that other account is?
I'm sure it is, because it's not. The balances are comparable, I think.
Yeah, it's a local government investment, so
Yeah.
they're comparable. I mean, they should be about the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's in there, cause it sits there, and then every April you make an interest payment, and then every October you make an interest and principal payment. We paid off the last bond we sold, and we made an interest payment in October for the bonds we sold last year. And we'll make an interest payment in April, then we'll make our first principal payment this October. And that money, the bond money, remember, that we sold is sitting in treasury notes. So it's just sitting there gaining interest, cause we tied that up for a year.
So we've got 4.8 million that we've received in SPOS fund, tax sales funds. That's in the Bank of New York, in that account. And so it's earning interest on that, because we have 5.4 million in our other account. So it's going to be very similar.
What, if we're collecting off that amount we're supposed to, we sold bonds based on collecting the lower amount. What, rough order of magnitude, effectively, what's the interest we're being charged on the bonds? Is it relative, like, in our favor?
Yeah, at this point, because we, can't remember the exact interest rate net of the premium, but the effective interest rate, effective interest rate probably about 3%. If we sold them and we got a premium, we got like 21 point something, 21.4, 21.5 million of proceeds on a $20 million note. So we got a premium, but so our net interest cost is our effective interest cost on $20 million is something like maybe 3.25, something like that.
So I guess what I'm asking is, we're gonna collect faster than we're gonna have to pay it back. And will we net out no interest? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I don't think we'll net out no interest, because there's still that our effective rate is pretty low. Cause still we'll see the net effective cost will be, cause right now we're earning more interest than we're paying back. When you factor in the T-notes that we've got sitting there. But then once the construction starts rolling, you start pulling out of that, then you're still, because there's an interest cost.
I know that I guess what I'm saying is, it's like, we're gonna max out on collection in about 2 years, 2.5 years.
That's the sweet spot, is figuring out when that'll be.
And then, so we get to hang on to all of it before we draw on interest.
You got
A chunk of it, a chunk of it's still gaining interest for 2.5 years.
So you're gonna collect more than, theoretically, we'll collect more than what the bonds are. the max before, just like the last guy.
Okay,
So,
I could ask some questions.
No, it's been a learning experience for me as well. This was my first bond sale, so from what I understand, okay, correct me, but, you know, instead of, once we sold the bonds, instead of putting that money in the Bank of New York just to sit there and earn money, it would have earned money. By doing the T-bills, by doing the T-certificates, we're gonna earn more. I think they said didn't they say up to like between 4.5% and 5%? I mean, it's gonna be significantly more than it would have been if we'd have just left it in local government. So it's over there
Ask
earning
one more
interest.
dumb question. We get, let's just say everything drops on the same, when we get to 2.5 years, we're talking about doing another SPOS at some point. Because we kind of planned around doing that, you know, having that SPOS in place for 5 years. Can we just collect that and invest it until we, and then save it up, and then, you know, because it's, assuming interest rates stay high, so we want to invest instead of borrow, and then not borrow until we get to the end of the current 5 years.
well, you can do one or two things, you know, the way the SPOS referendum works is, you know, we think about 5-year SPOS, and it is, but the correct way is you have to set the voter set what you say will be the maximum collection. And the way we word it on the referendum is, it's no more than 60 months or 5 years, or a maximum collection amount, whichever comes first. You can't, by statutory law, you can't go more than 5 years, but you can't collect more than this, whichever comes first. So if in 2.5 years, if that's when it ends, then you can revote the SPOS any time. You don't have to wait till the end, and we always voted a year early, but you can revote it any time and just, you know, thinking about a lot of things that, unknowns as we get a little closer, we'll be able to make a better determination. We would probably ask the board to revote, call an election to revote the SPOS at some point in 2024, maybe, 2020, early 2025, just depending on how the collections are, so that, you know, it would still, you still have that penny that's been on there for 20-something years. So you can revote it any time, but you gotta set a start date.
Yeah.
That's the key, so
Well, I guess
you
what
can't start the other one till while you're in the other one, and the other one's good, so I mean, that's the.
Well, I guess I was just saying, since, because we kind of planned the projects around that taking 5 years, so we wouldn't necessarily, that means we wouldn't necessarily be committed. So if we skip the bond sale for 2.5 years and just invest, if the interest rates are still high, just invest the proceeds until we get to that project point at 2020, whatever it is.
Well, you could, or the other side of that is, depending on what your project currently costs, and how much they're gonna go up, you know, that kind of thing, you could, you know, there's a lot of unknowns there, because you don't know what it's gonna cost, how much money it's gonna be, and the longer you wait, it could come down, you know, that's always, so, we're not at it, we'll know a lot more in the coming few months when we get some final budget numbers on the total cost of the gym. Then you can kind of start figuring out the path forward. So.
It sure has been nice to come down the hall and your current boss is a CPA and a finance director. So it's been very handy many times. I can promise you. He's got a lot of knowledge when it comes to all those things. He's done it for years, and I rely on that a lot. Any more questions that Steve can answer? Okay. Purchase orders. I think that's where we're at, right? The purchase orders. We have 2. The first one is for $50,000 to City Plumbing. This is local money. It is for LED lighting that recently or sometime last year has been few months, we met with Georgia Power, and they wanted to propose to replace all the lighting in the schools and go to LED in the classrooms and in the hallways, and it would be a great cost savings for us over a certain amount of time. So I think we all, after that presentation, we all kind of came to the same opinion that we could do that ourselves instead of having them do that. It was around a $2.2 million price tag that they had. And so that was the installation, the labor cost, and, them doing it in a shorter amount of time than we could. So I think that put fire in Chris and Mike, and they said, no, we can do that ourselves and save a lot of money. So you're seeing the first PO for that. He has already replaced many lights. In here, you can see how much brighter it is. And in several other buildings so far.
Pivas, Pivas and in this building, and we'll be starting, right after midwinter break at Chatsworth Elementary.
So this is a good example of that, of the maintenance crew and Chris and Mike and tackling a project that would have cost millions of dollars to do and doing it in-house.
How much savings do you think it would be when you do the total job?
I think I can do the job. Well, with the way prices are right now, that's a hard target to hit. But I think I can be somewhere around $150,000 for material. But the benefit is in the energy savings after the fact. That's where it gets really into the money.
So how long is it gonna take to get them all?
See, that's a good question. It will take us, it'll take several years.
Okay, so we're not looking at something before now when school starts back in the fall.
Well, the only time that we can do classrooms is in the summertime.
Yeah.
We're gonna try to tackle all the common areas. We can do that now. That's what we're gonna do. But when the summer rolls around, we're gonna pick like the classrooms down at Chatsworth, and we will already have the common areas done. We'll go in and get all the classrooms done. Might even could get 2 schools knocked out in the summertime. I'm not gonna make any promises, but just getting the common areas of the schools knocked out is a huge thing. So.
And this 50,000 is for which projects, which schools?
Well, it will be mainly for Chatsworth. It'll be more than just Chatsworth, but it gives me enough stock where whenever we get ready to go, we're not sitting there waiting on material. We can just start in the school and start working.
And I can promise you may think 50,000 is a lot to pay for LED lighting, but it's significantly less than what their project was going to be. Okay.
And you got a place to store your stuff. You listed.
Yes, we
got a place to
do. We're paying about $68 per fixture. Oddly enough, the dimmer switches that go to it cost about $88. The dimmer switches cost actually more than the light. And I will say, not to take up any more of your time, but these are all new fixtures where Georgia Power was going to basically put an LED strip in existing fixtures. So we're taking the old ones out, putting all brand new in, and then doing it for a fraction of what they were going to do.
You said there's going to be dimmers?
Yes. Well, and we have already put those in special ed, ESS classrooms, just for the visually impaired kids. And we've done that pretty much throughout. But in every classroom, there'll be dimmer switches.
And for offices that people can't see.
When I was in, I would have had them all too, because maybe they're home, so that's good that it's not really like surgery.
Right.
You can have any degree of brightness that you want. The next one is for teaching and learning. It is for contracted services. The 37,000 is for training and some observation and Spencer. I don't have my copy in front of me, but we're paying this through Title 2 and 3. It's not coming out of our local funds, and this is something that, they've been implementing at the school level?
Several years, yes. It's consulting. He comes and works with our content teachers in middle and high schools for strategies to help support English learners. Part of the Title III budget has to be devoted to professional learning, so this satisfies that requirements, and we've worked with Sean Slack for several years.
I think you had some FYIs in there. So, that should be it.
Real quick, last week, the branding project that Rich is working on, you got an estimate about what that'll cost?
What it costs to redo the logo and stuff, or when we get ready to start like putting stuff out, like maps and stuff like that.
You know, the total project as far as rebranding and
We already paid for, the logo and all that. That project, was only like $2,500 for our new logo. I don't have a cost yet for, our mats and that stuff. I'll go to different companies and get quotes when we get ready. I took they sent me some different color swatches, and I took it to the district leadership meeting and let all the principals look at it and let them vote, just to get an idea of what everybody liked best. We had one that was the overall winner, and I sent it back to them and asked them to put it in some different mock-ups. And I haven't got it back yet, but when I do, that's what I'll show y'all before. And then I'll take that to different companies and try to get the best price. Get some different bids on it. But that kind of thing usually runs anywhere, depending on what all we do, from about around 10, 15,000, depending on what all we do. If you want it on, like the maintenance vehicles and stuff like that.
Any questions? Any other questions?
Well, thank you, Dr. Smith. Next, academic achievement, we've got our I-Ready report, so I'll turn it over to teaching and learning. We've got some things that I'd like to go over. We've got some people in waiting here to explain those things, and a lot of the things that, Aaron, you used to try to do and with cipher and extrapolate, they can do that, and so they will be much better to explain it to Kelly than I ever could, so.
We are very excited tonight to be able to share with you our midwinter data. But we're more excited to have our partners in this work with us tonight. William Crispo, he is one of the fabulous set of three who just really walked beside us with this work. Caroline Rawls, she's in the middle. She is our professional learning director, and then Debbie is our data extraordinaire. So they were more than gracious to come and share with you. Just a quick look. I told you we had about 15 minutes, and then if you had any questions specific to anything, then Debbie is probably ready to answer, and Caroline. But we just appreciate you guys being part of this with us tonight. So Debbie, I'll let you take it away, and you have the handouts with the slides that Debbie will share.
All right, I'll go ahead and get started. Thank you guys so much for giving us the space to provide you a high-level overview of Murray's I-Ready data. And really, when we go into these data reviews, whether it's with district or school leaders, some of the questions we always ask is, what is the data telling us? And what are the actions that we're going to take as next steps? And your district has been great and has been really assertive in taking action quickly to make those changes. And as your partners, we are here to support you until the end of the year. In the form of even next week, supporting your school team leaders with this data and turnkey action. So I'm going to go ahead and start with what the data is telling us, and I'll kind of give you the takeaways from each slide. So the first thing I want to talk about is the district's placement comparing to several benchmarks, and one of them is how Murray compares to the Georgia year to date. So we take all of the students in Georgia that also take the same diagnostic from a math and reading, and we compare your district to them. So here on this slide, you're going to see math and reading, and you're going to see I-Ready's 5 placement levels. For reference, the dark green symbolize the students who are going to be proficient on the GMAT or the milestone. So as you can see, starting with math.
Can you share your screen? Do you mind sharing your screen?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
Georgia comparison of that, and you can see here the students that are on mid or above grade level, who are early on, who are one grade level below, who are what we consider kind of our low-hanging fruit, have lots of potential to move into the green. And the red signifies students who are working towards getting out of the RTI intervention. So those are students that are 2 to 3 grade levels above. As you can see here, for both math and reading, Marin County is really close to meeting and matching the Georgia benchmarks. And we'll jump into the grade level distributions and see which grade levels are actually on their way to exceeding the Georgia benchmarks as well. So here you see for mathematics, you're going to see kindergarten, first grade, where we have the district outpacing the Georgia state, especially in kindergarten by quite a bit in the green and not having any red. Here in first grade, you see that they're fairly equal in terms of the students that are already mid or above grade level in their grade, and having a lower percentage of students that are 2 grade levels below. And looking at second through fifth grade, we still have a bit more work to do in terms of meeting the Georgia benchmark. But it's good to know that as far as kindergarten and first grade, we're setting the foundations for that Georgia core curriculum, and hope to see that trend as those students move on into those months. What's really at the middle schools here is how the sixth grade elementary schools and the seventh and eighth grade middle schools are outpacing their Georgia benchmarks. So here in sixth grade and then our middle school, seventh and eighth grade, you're seeing where Murray is actually exceeding those mid-level or early on grade level placements in the middle school and in the sixth grade elementary school, which is awesome to see. And what's even more exciting is that you're closing the gaps for those students who are 2 to 3 grade levels behind, especially those eighth graders who are not in a regular classroom pre-pandemic. Those were highly affected. So to see eighth grade pacing the Georgia standards is phenomenal. We'll take a look at our reading data for now as well, and how we compare to the Georgia benchmark. You'll see where kindergarten is outpacing the state, so that's setting a great foundation, particularly in the foundational skills. And the other grade levels in first, second, third, fourth, and fifth, you see we still have a little bit of work to do. As we do more work with our school leaders, we can get a bit more granular and look at which domains and standards are going to need more help and support, and to get those students onto mid or above grade level. Okay. Kelly, stop me if there's any questions about the data, but I'm just going to roll through because I know we have about 15 minutes to go through. Okay?
And you guys feel free to jump in, or you can hold your questions until Debbie finishes sort of sharing everything.
Yeah. As far as reading, we are a little bit not as comparable to the math. We have sixth grade in our middle school grade levels that are nearing those Georgia benchmarks. But it is exciting to see where you have sixth grade and eighth grade are outpacing the district in terms of students that are in RTI or MTSS, or those students that are just in those intervention kind of avenues. All right, I want to do a really quick flashback to the year 21-22 school year, because I feel like looking how far you've come really gives you appreciation for how much progress your district has made. So this is a quadrant graph, and this is available for your school leaders, and it's a really great representation of knowing where your grade levels are in terms of growth and proficiency, right? We always want to talk about how are our students performing, and so this graph takes into account how much growth did each grade level make, and how far are they into making proficiency. So there are 4 quadrants here. This is the ideal quadrant, where you have grade levels that are high performing and high growth. On each of these grade levels, we take into account the middle representative student, okay? At the end of last year, all of your grade levels, K through 8, had the median typical growth over 100%, which is what we want to see all grade levels. What was even more exciting is that kindergarten for math was in that high performance, high growth quadrant. So that at the end of the year is a great feeling to know that that kindergarten was definitely high performing at the end of last year as well. Your 8th and 6th and 7th graders were right there on the cusp of meeting high performance, right? So this was last year. This year, at mid-year, we already have 3 grade levels that are in that ideal quadrant. kindergarten, sixth grade, and now we have seventh and first grade that are also touching that national meeting performance into high performers. Okay? Now, while it is a little bit concerning and something that we've already discussed as a district, we're looking at this quite a bit, are also looking at the grade levels of not performing or growing as we need to. So we've already addressed these grade levels, and I'm going to talk more in detail with school leaders about how to support these grade levels moving forward. But it is great to see where now, even half a year later, you're seeing phenomenal growth from certain grade levels and grade levels that are hitting high proficiency. All right, moving on, this is for reading. This is last year where we ended 21-22, where again you had kindergarten in the ideal quadrant for high performance and high growers. We don't want to discount growth because that is a vehicle to proficiency. So we are able to see how grade levels last year grew and how it's now translating to this year. So this was the end of 21-22 school year. That sixth grade really knocking at the door of being high performers, and this is how we are mid-year now. Your sixth graders are now in high performing. We've got eighth grade leading the pack here in terms of growth. And again, we're taking a look at grade levels and seeing where can we provide further support in the standards and domains to help these students finish strong by the end of the year. Okay? Every school admin is going to have access to this that's particular specific to their school, so they can each come up with kind of a plan to support their students at the school level. All right, and then this is quite a bit of a slide, and I'll talk to you about it in a little, in orient you to what's going on here. This is Murray County and takes a look at all of the grade levels K through 8, and it looks at what placement level did they place at the beginning of the year. You had some grade levels, like in 6th and 8th grade, that had students that were coming in already very high. So students that already knew the grade level before they even got their tier 1 instruction. Okay? Of course, you have students early, 1 grade level below, 2 and 3 grade levels below. The percentages here tell us how much growth those groups of students have made since the beginning of the year. So I'll give you an example of 8th grade. Those students in 8th grade, the 16 student that started off mid or above grade level, made 67% median typical growth. So that 8th student, that student in the middle, 8th grader, made 67% median typical growth. At this point of the year, we see at least 50% median typical growth. So this dark blue, where you're seeing dark blue, is where you want most all grade levels and all placement levels to be. Okay? So we're seeing that in 8th grade across the board. We're seeing that definitely in students that are 2 and 3 grade levels below. So we know that intervention is working for those students in terms of remediation. Where we have already addressed some of the issues in moving forward are the students who came on early on grade level and 1 grade level below. So we're doing walkthroughs, we're talking about the discourse and instruction for those students who are early on and were moved to the student style at the beginning of the year. Okay? But overall, we're seeing great growth across the board for every grade level and at every placement they tested at the beginning of the year. Here in mathematics, I'm starting for reading, we're kind of seeing the same trends. What's awesome is that we have several grade levels, kindergarten, 2nd, 3rd, 7th, and 8th grade, where we are seeing every median typical student making over 50% median typical growth, so that they're on track. Where we see the areas of need are 4th, 5th, and 6th graders who placed mid or above and early on. So we definitely want to have some discussions about what we are doing for the students that are high flyers, our accelerated students, and helping them to stay proficient by the end of the year for that GMAT. All right, so that was a really high and a really quick overview as far as the data. And I'm going to go ahead and now transfer to Karen, because she's going to be talking about the action piece as far as what we're doing with your data.
Thank you, Debbie. So as part of our partnership with you all, something that we do is we offer professional development to help really support moving the district forward in meeting proficiency goals as well as growth goals. So what you're seeing on this additional supports to our new teachers specifically. And these are some of the things that they valued, being able to have some time to be collaborative, being able to see some things in action, and really being able to plan together, work together cohesively to advance student learning forward. Some of our next steps as we move forward into the year, one thing that we're currently in the process of doing is we've partnered with you all to do classroom walkthroughs, where we have our PD specialist folks coming and visiting and going into classroom, seeing math instruction in particular in action, giving teachers feedback, and also giving leaders feedback on how they can continue to grow and develop those grade level instructional practices to try to help with some of those areas that we've identified as being some key next steps in the data. Some other things, just kind of thinking about development moving forward into next year, is just really being strategic about how we're supporting our different groups of teachers, and also being very strategic about some of our specific student reports. Debbie, will you flip to the next slide for me, please? And so, in looking at the data and partnering together with districts, these are some of our supports we have planned for the remainder of the year. As Debbie mentioned, we will be having a session next week with school leaders. We've had kind of a preliminary high-level overview with them so far of data, like we've looked at with you guys tonight. But we also are going to be having a little bit more of an in-depth session with them next week to really help them pinpoint those areas, especially those grade levels, where we're not seeing as much growth and proficiency, and help them figure out how to drill down into each of our reports to dig a little bit deeper into their next steps. And then, as I mentioned, we have that walkthrough process going on right now as well, where we're getting in those classrooms and engaging with educators. So those are just some of the supports at a high level there that we're doing as we partner with you all. All right, perfect. One of the things I wanted to show you really quickly, just because I know that you've had some questions about a feature that we just actually updated, is this really amazing feature that we'll also talk about with school leaders and district leaders about something called projected proficiency. So we do have this feature now in iReady, where we can make projections about the potential of students' levels or proficiency levels on the GMAT. So this is a projected proficiency feature that's going to be available at the district and school admin level. That's really going to give your district insight into seeing at this point of the year how many students would make proficiency in your buildings, how far have we come since diagnostic 1. We have information as far as at the grade level and by school, so we can kind of already have discussions about which grade levels are going to be needing support in grades 3 through 8 as far as how we gear those students up for GMATs. I'm not going to click further because we are going to look into student names, but we can also take a look at by class, by student, to come up with a plan as far as which students to target for that support. But we can also use this as a metric for planning in terms of how you're going to gear those students up to do their very best for the GMATs. And so this is all thanks to your district's contribution to helping us make sure that these linking studies are strong, that they match with the GMATs and our iReady placements. And so this is definitely an exciting feature that we are going to talk about with your school admin and really get into strategic planning as far as how to use this and roll this out with your districts and talking about by student, how we can support them moving forward. Are there any questions from the board for us?
We can circle back if you have any questions. I know that was sort of a quick overview, and that's why I really wanted you to have the slides so you could look back. But if you have any questions, please feel free to ask Debbie or Caroline or even William or Spencer and I or Barbie.
And GMAT is the milestone.
Yeah, GMAT is the Georgia milestone.
Oh, okay, I figured that's what it was, so.
And y'all did a lot of cruises at Spring Place yesterday, is that correct?
They've been at Chatsworth. Jennifer has had her walkthrough. Pam started today. And Amelia has finished hers. Liz is the 9th and the 13th. And then Amy, you're next week too, correct? Yes. Yeah, and then the Gladden and Bagley. But it's a really unique thing we've been able to offer our teachers and our administrators to actually get in there and have that 2 days, 2 full days with a consultant just watching that construction, supporting the teachers and supporting them as administrators in those classrooms. It's a great thing to be able to sort of that next step to support them in.
When these kids take these already, is it time?
No.
It's not time, so they can finish it, it doesn't matter if it takes them all day.
Yeah, and what we try to do, Kelly, what we believe is that a shorter testing session yields a better result. So a student, of about 20 minutes is about the max, depending on their age, of just attention. So they have, Debbie, correct me, it's 28 days from the time they start until the time they have to finish. If they don't finish within 28 days, they have to start over. But typically, they finish in about 2 to 3. But what we recommend even for the littles is about a 15-minute testing session. Get in there, do a little bit and stop, come back, do a little bit and stop. Because what we found is that there's a trend line where everybody gets bored and then the achievement starts to drop again. And so we really encourage them to do their best. We also have a feature that it will flag a student who's rushing. So if they notice that a student's just click, 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 we can actually restart that test. We'll tell them, no, we're not going to rush through this, because what we need is their best data, because their intervention is built around how well they do. So that personalized pathway is really important. Yeah, Aaron?
They restart the test, cause the big spreadsheet that you give me, cause it had a couple students, well, not more, a lot more than a couple, duplicating. Now, is that what I'm seeing there, when they had to do it twice because of rushing or something?
Well, it depends, like the second sheet I sent, and the last one would have every time they've taken the assessment. So they're gonna be on there a minimum of 3 times.
Okay.
Cause it's all in one, that there are some students who you'll see more than 3 sets of data.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, can I still have the big spreadsheet?
Sure, of course you can.
I ain't on Google Sheets yet.
Okay.
I didn't see it up there.
No,
I
it's
just
not
wondered,
that
because my 5th grader from beginning of year to mid-year, he went down in both sets, but just by 2 or 3 points. And I asked him, he's like, I don't know, but I'm thinking to myself, that's why I asked if it was time, because if he gets bored, he'll just quit, like, clutch time, and he'll be done with it. So I just wondered if that's probably something he
That's why
did.
we really try to make sure that they don't. Yeah, and there's going to be fluctuations from one testing period to the other. But typically we want to set them up. We also ask the teachers to sit down and do a one-on-one chat with every student and set a goal, so they know where they are currently, what their goal is for the next assessment period, and then we go back and talk to them individually. This is how you did, this is where you are, here's your growth, and this is what you really need to concentrate on for the next testing period. So it has become very personal. Yeah.
Okay, last year, kindergarten was kind of like they're doing now, but, look at first grade for this year, what happened? We got 65%, that's a grade below, when last year, the kindergarten was super.
At the end of the year. Yeah, and you're looking at mid-year right now.
Right.
Currently, right? So the information that Debbie shared, Debbie, you want to pull that up? Which slide?
Page 5. Reading.
Back up.
Page 5. There you go.
Which one are you looking at?
I'm looking at, okay, I'm first grade, I'm looking, because they were last year's kindergartners for us. See, they're 65% are one grade below level.
Yes.
And when last year they were out doing so super duper good, but then what's happened?
You know, we had that same question, and because it sort of went, oh my gosh, what's going on? But Debbie explained it perfectly to all of us to sort of alleviate. Is that 1 year below, is that group that's ready to learn? Okay, so Debbie, can you articulate that a little better than I can, that the yellow is kind of the sweet spot currently, because
Right, I'm looking at the correct slide right now that you're referring to, this slide right here.
Yeah, but the 65% in yellow, right there, Debbie.
Right there, that one.
Yeah, so this slide compares, actually, this doesn't compare the cohort from last year, this is actually just just this year. This is Georgia standards, and then this is the district Murray. What I like to think about is this 65% talks about that low-hanging fruit. Those students that are one grade level behind that are going to benefit from tier one instruction. And so I wouldn't count these students out as below, but students who have the potential to actually get into the grade. We can definitely take a look at where they were last year in terms of that. We do have that data as well. Just thinking about the standards going from kindergarten to first, especially in the content area of reading, where you are having that heavy bombardment of standards, where students are definitely getting into that phonics piece. That's where we tend to kind of see the dip because there is such a big jump from those foundational skills going from kindergarten to first grade.
So are you saying that in the kindergarten that they're not tested on phonics?
They are tested on phonics as well as phonological awareness, and first grade is also tested in phonological awareness and phonics.
Yeah. And so, Brenda, also the thing to remember is you're looking at mid-year with a full half of the year remaining for those students.
Well, they were out 3 months for the summer.
So, there are a lot of things that impact that, but the good news is that you'll notice a really sharp decrease in the students who are 2 or more grade levels below. And we are actually above the state. We are reducing that number, Debbie, correct? We're really reducing that number. And that will continue to roll on, is that they're not getting further and further behind. We're really closing that gap in terms of students who are multiple grade levels.
I was just hoping to see first grade, those high scores would have carried over.
Well, the story's not written yet. We've still got, we'll sort of hold that point until we look at the end of the year, because there's a lot of learning, and you guys know, a lot of that Christmas magic. You've taught kindergarten, and you know that there are a lot of things that happen to a student after, in that second semester, when a lot of things just start clicking. So, there's a lot of potential there for our first graders. Aaron, go ahead.
Yeah,
I see it.
this is a little off topic, and I don't know if it's, I don't see Mike with me, I don't know if it's a Mike or a principal question, but I think I'm asked for this, and I definitely want to know, like, by grade in school, at each grade level, teachers, how many years in that grade on that subject, the experience level, so we can look at it, compared with what our results
Kind of
are.
correlate it. Yeah, we'll get that for you, Aaron, because that's another piece of data that's really interesting to look at. But we wanted to share this with you guys tonight and give you an opportunity to see our folks and our partners, and if you have any other questions.
Do you have a big spreadsheet?
I'll just have to download it. It won't take me. I can have it. I can have it too first thing in the morning. Unless you want it tonight. I'll get it to you first thing in the morning.
We wanted to go over this first and then.
Yeah, so you have that piece of information. Anything else about the data? Well, Debbie and Caroline, thank you guys so much. I'm gonna close that up, and then Spencer's got a couple other things. William, thank you.
Jim, thank you, everyone.
Thank you guys. Back to you.
And I would add that the winter to spring benchmark is going to be more closely correlated when comparing against Georgia because of the days between the assessments. So the story's not written, Kelly talked about it. So looking at the full year gives a better picture too. But we were thinking about you, Aaron, we saw the projections tab coming out, and we're thinking all the work that you're doing.
Our first assessment happens here. And this is the timeline. Our first assessment happens here. Most of their first assessments happen a month before ours.
Correct.
Yes.
So they have an extra month in between their first and second. As their projection tool, it's based on their norms, not our norms.
They have our last year data too, so their linkers they use based on our fall, winter assessments.
Because ours is different.
Yes. A
However,
little bit.
there is a standard protocol that requires 12 weeks of support MyPath between benchmarks. And so the systems that test earlier than we do, they don't get extra time. It's just that their windows are shifted, but we have 12 weeks and they also have 12 weeks.
Yeah, but how do they've got 12 weeks, but can they not have more than 12 weeks?
Yes, they could possibly have, they set their windows
That's where they
differently,
would be us.
but they're 180 days or 160
I know,
days.
that's what I'm saying, that's what I'm saying, like ours
You
could
got to
look,
have milestone
to Rick's point, ours could look depressed in the midpoint.
Correct.
Because we,
We haven't had as much
because our
school.
midpoint probably lines up to their midpoint, our starting
Yeah.
point is behind.
And Aaron, and actually Liz mentioned this during her mid-year, we tested about a month later last year at the midpoint than we did this year. Because what happened is we wanted our tested grades, 3rd through 8th grade, wanted their spring data well before it was time for milestones, so they could go in and do some interventions,
So we
right?
tested earlier this time?
We still had 12 weeks. The window was just a little bit earlier because we needed 12 weeks to get 3rd through 8th grade data out to them by the 1st of April so that they would have those
So
12
we're
weeks.
going earlier this year,
We went earlier on the mid-year assessment.
on the mid-year.
Correct.
So we would expect comparing mid-year's last year's results to mid-year's this year's results should be, this year's results should be worse than mid-year last year.
They tested earlier.
Yeah.
They tested earlier in their academic year. They still had the same number of weeks. We just tested. Yes, the principals asked for 3rd through 8th grade if they could get that spring data about a month ahead of milestones so they could go in and be really strategic. What that means though, and it's not gonna affect our K2 teachers, we've been able to do a workaround, so they will test in May. So they'll actually have a little bit longer in this second pocket of time. So we'll have staggered administrations for different purposes, but it won't affect our K2 students. They'll actually have a little bit more time instructionally before they benchmark.
When is milestones day?
Mm-hmm.
And then they'll turn around and do this again after milestones, because that's how we did it last year, the milestones we did already.
They'll do it four.
That's why
They'll do it about 4 to 5
That's
weeks
why they wanted
prior.
to move the window moved.
Yeah, and then
So they wouldn't have
K2
test
will
fatigue.
test after.
Well, I hope we just decide which was better, last year or this year, and do it that way from now on forever.
Yeah, but you know, you've got a half a year left to go.
Oh, I
And
know,
so
I'm just saying,
you really
because,
wanna
you know, it kind of
see what.
upsets the apple cart looking year to year to year.
I think probably this year will be the pattern going forward because of what you get your gain that assessment prior to the milestone. See if you can move a few more of those that's close to 3, but that are 2, you might be getting to 3.
Yeah, if you do going in and you have.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, I understand why you did, it makes perfect sense to me, but like, just don't change it back.
Well, and the data you really wanna look at is the end of the year. There's a lot of learning. That mid-year pulse check gives us a real idea about where we currently stand with a lot of instructional time remaining in the year. If we didn't have it, it would be just you'd be going blind into the milestones. So the real story of achievement happens at the end of the year. That's why we kind of don't take a mid-year milestones and wait to the end. This gives us an opportunity to see where we're at. Yeah, the end of the year data is what you're really looking at.
Thank you.
All right, you got TSI and CSI?
Yes. So this is a great time and an honor to be able to celebrate and recognize some individuals in the individual schools. We had 3 schools that exited the CSI and TSI list from the Georgia Department of Education. And those are Pleasant Valley Innovative School, Eton Elementary School, and Coker Elementary School. So we'd like up here, but Liz and Jennifer, if y'all will come up here, please. I don't have, anything, I just wanted to.
Can you explain to us why?
Yes, yes, we will. So the CSI, Dr. Watt, is the CSI alternative. If their graduation rate is 67% or lower, they can be placed on there, or if their academic achievement is in the lowest 5 percentile, based on milestones.
And then,
Correct
TSI,
me if I'm wrong, the CSI, there is no separate grading for alternative schools.
they're working on that.
They're
But no,
working,
we never
but-
released on the list.
So they're basically a high school. So I mean, that's why we thought, well, you know, you'll never get off there, but I don't think they did. We didn't think they ever would. I mean,
Well, they released the list, and they said, hold on, we've got to, it was embargo, they said, hold on, we gotta redo it, and then a week later, they re-released the list, and I was thinking, well, you know, but because we don't have a lot of students at Pleasant Valley that take milestones, we may only have 8 that take algebra, depending on if they were there, and if you don't have 15, you don't get a score on it, so.
Gotcha, okay.
But, and then in the TSI schools, they're on there because it could be because of a subgroup, low performance on the milestones of their CCRPI indicator. So it's, and then I think the subgroups, and we work, Barbie and Kelly work with the 2 TSI schools, and I work with Dr. Locke. Each school, each district has to have a district representative or contact. There's a lot of work that goes in this. There's a district plan of support. There are, of course, we get money, the years we've had it. But the reason that I think the schools came off the list is because these 2 ladies and Dr. Locke are not here because they invested in people. They used the money to invest in people, interventionists, to help, you know, targeted students, and professional learning for interventionists, the pre-K or K care pros, and we know people make the difference. At Pleasant Valley, they have a Check and Connect coordinator that Grant was paying for. Y'all met Hattie the dog?
Yeah.
You know, that's part of the Check and Connect program. And they've made tremendous strides because they invested in people. And it's because of people like these 2 and Dr. Locke and believing in, you know, what they're doing started off the list. And it's very impressive. So thank y'all.
So when you said money, and I guess are we gonna lose these?
We're gonna lose some money, and we are. Barbie did some math. It's $1.33 million we've received, and since we've been on the list from 2018.
For the 3 schools.
Success grants, other grants. Well, it increased. It started off originally, it was $75,000 per school, then they increased allocations. I think this last time was 105 per school, 105 or 110.
105, 130.
Yeah. It just kept increasing, but.
I'm not sorry to see it go.
Yeah.
Okay, but
As
now,
with grants, grant requirements and budgeting, and Charlotte.
So is there room in the budget to maintain it?
Well, we hope that the Check and Connect program at Pleasant Valley, will be able to maintain that, and also they built in.
Yeah, sustainability was part of
Sustainability.
the plan.
Yep, it continues on.
so we've got enough there, like people that they hire, you're not losing.
Well, for this year,
We don't know yet.
but for this year, it's paid for.
Yeah, right, but next year.
Yeah, well, one, you don't know, hopefully you've done enough good job, as Liz said, cause you know, it's not, the goal is you make academic improvement so that you don't need them, so that's how you get off the list, so there's some sustainability and things that they've done that you shouldn't, if you're doing what you should be doing, you've improved so that you don't need the massive amount of spending for that you had, so.
But they built capacity at their schools too, so like corrective and interventionists and the training and the consultants that they've had come in, they've built capacity at their schools, so they're able to carry on some of that because they've invested in people. And,
I understand, you know, but I'm
so,
just saying,
yeah.
was there some people hired?
Yes.
Yes. So, if, I don't know who's class,
Their jobs were temporary, it was grant funded, it was part of us going into the process.
they knew that when they know.
Then you
Yeah,
get
they
it.
knew
Year
that.
to year.
Year to year.
It's grant money.
But they did a great job and come off the list. All 3 schools is amazing. They've actually invited Dr. Locke and all of them for a celebration at the ILC, and Dr. Locke is serving on a little advisory panel. I'll sit on there with her about for alternative schools, like looking at, there's a lot of alternative schools on the CSI list.
And I think it's the
tell me, is it like the 13th or 14th, somewhere in there, they're gonna go get recognized.
It's
27, there you go, so it's what I,
28.
sometime in there, but.
It's in February.
Yeah, we're gonna I'm gonna try to go and they're gonna go and, be recognized by the DOE for getting off the list.
So the next thing on the agenda is the, Stanley, this one too, is the 23-24 calendar and,
Spencer's favorite thing.
Yeah, Conrad and I were able to talk before the board meeting a little bit, but you know, you gave me a good idea. We have new board members, and sometimes you just assume that you understand the process of adopting the calendar. I thought, well, you know what? We'll review just the basic outline of how a calendar is adopted, because it's not by one person or a few people or, you know, everybody, but there is a process. And the way the process starts is I meet with Mr. Lockridge, and the reason I do is because the DOE someone has to be the designee to input the calendar for minutes and make sure it meets instruction minutes. So I'm the designee for our district. I meet with Mr. Lockridge and say, hey, we're developing some options. Let's go over the parameters. Are we still going to take a full week for Thanksgiving? Are we going to start Labor to Memorial Day? Are we going to take a full week of midwinter break? And so, or with Veterans Day, it's a student holiday, you know, so we go through all those, and then based on those, you know, there's not a lot of options we have. So, but then I create a couple of different options. Basically, it's moving the Christmas break, start and end times. Then I present those to the district leadership at a Monday morning huddle, and we look over them. I talk through the different options. And then we actually share them with the principals of the district meeting, with all the administrators. And we give them the two options. We get it down to two options. And we ask them to take it back to their schools, get input from their schools. And then they email me or send me their recommendations for each school. Now, Jennifer Reed, I think, created a Google form that many of the schools use this year, and they send it out to their faculty and staff to get input on the calendar. Some people use different methods, but I collect all the feedback. I actually have a chart. I don't mind to give you a copy of this. And what I do is I just collect the feedback and determine which option receives the most votes, or each school, you know, it's based on schools. So the number of schools, the greatest number of schools that recommend an option is the option you get in front of you in February. And you can see where I have percentages. Those are the ones that use the Google forms. Some of the schools just sent a recommendation. So option one, there were two options we got out. Option one, which is for your to look at, that was approved, or the recommendation of 11 out of 12 schools. I include pre-K and Amanda in this. And then the second thing you're going to look at is spring break. Typically, we try to incorporate Good Friday in our spring break. Good Friday next year is in March. And so we looked at the different options of having the spring break in April, the first week in April. And you can see that was the overwhelming choice of the schools. If it was, you know, if you just did the percentages, it's close to 90%. But overwhelmingly, they favored the April spring break.
Option one and option two is one.
Excuse me?
Christmas.
It's option two was the purple date is the 19th. It just backed up when we got out for Christmas 2 days earlier, and it backs everything up 2 days. Like the teachers would come back on that Wednesday, and then students would come back on Thursday, Friday.
Cause you know, there was a lot.
Oh, a lot.
Yes, sir, I do.
So next year,
Really?
we can just put this up.
So,
I didn't hear one.
that's why I was reviewing the process.
Next year,
A lot of people called me, and I was like, you know.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
You thought we was cutting their leg off.
Matter of fact, I don't even get a vote. It's all the schools. But they, on the calendar, man. Because I wouldn't have voted for the one we had currently. But we support what the schools recommend because, and ultimately we have to look at it. I reminded principals, when we're looking at this is an academic calendar for students. This isn't a calendar that we create for what's best for adults. And so we have to keep that in mind. To me, that's what's important looking at this. So when you look at splitting the weeks up, how good's a 2-day, week for students? You party on one day and pre-party on the other. I mean, I don't know.
All your plans.
Compared to a 4 or 5 day week.
Babysitting, really.
So you have to just remind yourself that what you're doing is you're looking at creating and adopting an academic calendar.
Okay, I have a question, and it's just always been, and I probably asked years ago, I don't know, but how come, like, we start school in September, and all these other school systems have the 180 day, but they don't get all these breaks? How do we get by? Because everybody says, y'all never go to school in Murray County. And I'm like, well, we do, but we do have a lot of breaks. So how do we get by with having all these breaks?
Well,
like winter break.
You have another calendar in there, and it numbers every day.
Okay.
So it goes up to 160 days.
So somebody's just not smart as we are.
Well, I wouldn't say that.
We don't know, they don't get no winter break. Murray County don't get no winter break.
They don't get the full
They get
fall
3
break.
days, and they get a fall break. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is somebody just not putting into it like we are? Like maybe no school gets, I mean, you don't hear about schools getting 2 weeks at Christmas and then another week in February and then a week at April. And then not going back to September.
Kelly, they take a fall break and then a mini winter break, so they get 3 days in the fall and 2 days in the spring, and that equals a total week.
So it's just different.
It's different time.
The difference in it is there's a lot more flexibility when you go outside the constraints of Labor and Memorial Day. And then you can play around with a little fall break of Friday, Monday with
I guess since we put ours into weeks, it makes it look like we don't.
But it is, no, I think it is.
So our kids are going to school on Good Friday.
Yes. And Brenda, I looked at that, I was curious. I looked at all the systems that either their current calendar or next year's that they published in Georgia and Tennessee, and looked to see if their spring break did not include Good Friday, which most try to. The ones that didn't, how many observed Good Friday as a student and or staff holiday, and I didn't find very many. I was a little surprised, to be honest.
Because it's hard, you can't get, if you don't take spring break in March versus, and we just had a 1 week variation.
Yeah.
But that's what most people.
The next 2 years, Good Friday's in April.
Yes.
The year after that, it goes back to March, and then there's a year, and then it's March, and there's 3 good years, and then hopefully won't be the calendar now.
First thing when Spencer comes in there and he asks me about, about the golden calendar, and I don't look that plan. I said, Spencer, where's Good Friday? Is it in March or is it in April? And if it's in April, then boy, it's good. But if it's in March, I mean, you're starting off bad. So.
Yes, sir.
What do you know about the surrounding systems as far as like, is it spring break? They always got that.
Next year's calendar?
Yeah.
I don't. They'll be adopting the same time we are. I'm not privy to any options they have. I would imagine, based on the published 23-24 calendars that I've seen from other systems, that first week in April is very popular. I would be surprised if it's not the first week in April.
Was it last year or year before we did the second week in April? And I love that.
I've asked to join there.
Floyd County is the second week, I know.
Gordon?
Floyd,
okay, yeah, we did that one, since I've been on board, had that one.
Yeah, and like I said, next 1 year is the third week in April, Good Friday. But no, I'm still working on trying to get invited to that meeting.
You can give them bad ideas and they don't
But that's the calendar for your review and approval.
I just like to know that when they start dropping next year, we can remind them, hey, this is what you wanted.
Well, that's it.
There's some schools that's gonna say, no, we voted.
Well, you're right.
The majority.
There's one school.
The majority.
But you look, I think it was a 52-48%. And there's not an overwhelming choice. There's probably 40% of the people who participated in the feedback are not going to get the option that they chose.
You should ask who was last.
Who was what?
I did have one, Kelly connection.
Yeah.
Somebody had told me that they were writing about that being there the week of Christmas, or the week prior to Christmas, that they couldn't start anything new. We were done, but they can't go forward and start any new learning. So it was a waste of time us being there. And I'm like, well, surely you can do reviews. Well,
That is not true.
Okay.
We keep going, right?
That is not true.
Okay, because I was like, well, that doesn't make sense, but if it is the truth, then
This year,
it's-
we never stop, Kelly. In fact, I have teachers who'll email me and say, you know, it's the week before Christmas, can we not do reading this week? And can we read, you know, all this Christmas and, yeah, you can, but you don't do it in reading. Every year I'm asked, can we not do reading? Can we not do this that last week? And what do we say?
Well, it's a lot easier to stick to a schedule than it is to go hog wild.
I know. Yeah,
And
so Kelly, that is not true. We teach to the last minute.
And a lot of the people that expressed their concerns that week when we were going and others, they enjoyed it on the last half of it.
Yeah.
So,
When they weren't going back to school the day after New Year's.
Yeah.
but it's not. I mean, it's just some people have different options they choose. I mean, it's not a right or wrong. You just want the one that best reflects the greatest percentage of the people working schools.
Yeah, some of you ain't gonna make it.
There's the calendar. And we can, that's the first page, you gotta get the calendar, and then we start, that's the first piece of planning for the
Now, we will know,
forward,
when will we send this out?
well, if you vote on Monday.
Oh, oh, okay.
And once you vote, we'll translate it, we'll publish it, get our communications.
First step,
department.
Next we have, under parent and community engagement, Alicia has got, you've got before you there a copy of the Murray Minute, which she has, published that and worked hard on. So, Alicia, you want to explain just kind of what we've got there, the January issue of the Murray Minute?
Sure. I pushed out, last week, I believe, internally, this is our Murray Minute. This is just our internal distribution, newsletter to keep everybody informed about what's going on in the other schools in the district, and then, it also does a little district focus. And so we focused, this month on, of course, our new wellness department and highlighted some of the great things that they have going on. And, we know that next week is National, Counseling and School Counseling Week. So we're gonna be doing a recognition of them Monday night, for the ones that can attend. And then, also, we're working on putting together a wellness fair, educational meeting that, with our fentanyl committee, that Carol will share more information on. So I'll let her kind of inform with that, but that'll be coming up too. So this just highlights some of that information, and you know that, we were able to provide for our McKinney-Vento families at Christmas. And we had a lot of donations, and those were collected here, and then even here at central office, we took up and donated in Steve's name for his Christmas gift, and so we were able to provide those baskets, just really good turnout. And then also highlighted our human resources department and our upcoming job fair on February 11th, next Saturday. So we're excited about that. We did a registration form, and so far, I think when I checked it, I checked it right before 5, and we had, it was up to 30 registrants, people that had registered, so that was exciting. And we have a radio ad out, I don't know if I've heard it, but
Here it is.
Oh, yeah.
you did? How'd it sound? Good.
I don't know, I mean, I'm gonna be listening to it.
Yeah, it's on 8 times a day on 3 different stations.
I heard it on 104.5, so.
Yeah, it's on there, it's on the mountain, and then the Buenos, whatever it is, Spanish station.
too. So.
Spanish?
Me?
Yeah, was you translating?
No, she said they put it on there in English because you wanted to be bilingual. So, you know, that's what she said. I asked. I was like, so you're gonna translate that, or how's that work? And she said, no, we leave you in English because you wanted to be able to be bilingual. So there you go. So yeah, so you get that 8 times a day on each station. So
you gonna? Should you cast your net wider?
that's just one thing we've done. It's been on the news, on Channel 3. It's gonna be in the paper. We also sent it directly to like, I think 18 different colleges that we asked them to put on their boards. And then I also sent it to, different newspapers, to the Cleveland Banner.
The Cleveland Daily Banner.
Cleveland Daily Banner and the Chattanooga Township Press. So I've put it everywhere I could try to get it. And then of course it's on our social media too, and the papers, social media. So hopefully, we'll continue to get more people registered and they'll show up next Saturday, I hope. But anyway, and then it just has your school highlights on there, of the activities they've had going on, just some great things happening at every school. This is one of my favorite things that I get to do. I love getting the highlights from the schools and seeing all the activities that they have going on. There's so many great things, and actually, this time when I was putting this together, I thought I'm gonna figure out a way to start sharing some of this stuff out and not just internally, because there's just so many little great tidbits in here. It's just amazing what all happens in the schools, and it's so neat to be able to pull it all together and see it, here in this little highlight reel each month or every other month. So, and I think the schools are doing great, from what I see on their social media pages, pushing stuff out and celebrating this, celebrating that. So they do that. I think they're doing a good job. They do, and a lot of times, they'll send me these highlights, and I go fish the little photos and stuff right off of their Facebook pages, because they do such a good job of highlighting what's happening in their buildings. And you'll see on there, I tried to recognize each one of the schools that exceeded the list and put that as one of their highlights. And then, of course, Northwest had Roger's retirement and Amy and Zach's announcements on there. And then in our spotlight area, I made sure to, of course, the National School Counseling Appreciation Week, but we also had the joint district chorus that came at Christmas and did the caroling for us in here in this room, and they're just such a treat. We look forward to having them here every year, and they just do such a great job. They're the cutest group, and they come in, and it just makes our Christmas up here to have them come in and sing, and they did such a good job this year. And so I wanted to highlight them on there, and then of course I included LAG because that was a big thing again to have Georgia win. And then we got a spotlight sent in because I told principals if they have anything they want to put under the spotlight. And so Chatsworth Elementary, they do a Sunday story time live on their Facebook where they read a story and all their little chiefs can tune in. So I got a email recognizing that program, so we'll shout out Chatsworth for that. And sometimes you don't have to be a Chatsworth chief to tune in and read, so sometimes my kiddos will listen to the stories on there. And so that was a shout out that I received, so I included that. And so just a reminder, if anybody can submit to that, so if you ever have anything you want to recognize, just let me know. So you should read a book from the chicken house.
What time is that reading on Sundays? Is it always certain time, or is
I try to post it by 2 on Sundays, but sometimes it's always before 6. We just sent out something at the beginning of the year asking parents to read to their kids every night, and we would take care of Sundays. So we post something every Sunday. Always looking for guest readers.
There you go, stay from the chicken house. If you go on and follow their page, you get a notification. Yeah, there's like a post, and you can go on there and watch it. So that's it. So I'll keep on doing that. And
And public participation, I think that's good.
All right, I need a motion, we go into executive session, discuss personnel. Motion by Brenda, second by Aaron, all in favor? And,